Did you really ride all the way here in the back of some farmer's wagon?
I don't want to talk about it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Cast of Kings, a decoding TV podcast about the HBO original series, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I'm David Chen, and I have not read George R.R. Martin's A Night of the Seven Kingdoms.
I'm Kim Renfro, and I have read George R.R. Martin's A Night of the Seven Kingdoms.
Welcome to the podcast, everyone. Today on the show, we're going to be covering A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, Season 1, Episode 3, entitled The Squire. We'll start with our overall thoughts. We'll dive into the specifics of what happened in the episode. Kim Renfro is going to give us some great insights and comparisons with what happened in the books. And then we will conclude with some of your feedback and responses to our last podcast. So let's get into it, Kim Renfro. What were your overall thoughts on Season 1, Episode 3, entitled The Squire?
I loved this episode. I was smiling more throughout this episode of TV than I maybe have at TV in a long time. Although, shout out to Miss Rachel. Like even, the little gross out moment in this episode. Last week I was pondering, what are they going to do in episode 3 that might shock or horrify me? And this time instead I was like, haha, the horse is pooping. Egg, like right off the bat, I think the tone setting of this episode was flawless. The music throughout was so good. And like a lot of original stuff in here, songs that, as you just played, songs that aren't necessarily in the books that they must have written whole cloth for just this episode. Just really incredible attention to detail, both from the books and bringing in new material that puts a smile on my face and probably other book readers. And I'm very curious to see how non-book readers feel about this episode, including you.
I mean, I continue to really enjoy the episode. I think there's some really impressive work with actual real life horses in the show. Just like physically, it's impressive that they seem to be doing a lot of this work for real, and it's well done. Now, I want to be clear, okay? I don't know the full details of what happens to these characters in the future. Like, I don't know exactly like what their fates are or anything like that. But I have seen some mildly spoilery things that, let's just say, led me to believe that Egg might be of some importance. Perhaps a certain character's dying words in Game of Thrones might have referenced Egg, in some ways. And, and so I kind of like have an inkling, but I will say the extremely shocking reveal that happens at the end of this episode, it still is very well done. It still got me. I'm still like, oh, like, holy shit. Like, I didn't know, I hadn't like put it all together that is exactly how they all tied together.
Yeah.
And so it was still like a really fun moment for me at the end of the episode.
Nice.
I had not had it completely spoiled for me. But yes, it's fun, and also it kind of is like, oh, I thought part of the appeal of the show was that it wasn't about royal bloodlines, and I guess it all comes back to royal bloodlines in Westeros.
I know.
So.
I think when we were talking about the pilot episode, you mentioned something like that, and also,
and then you were like, I'm not going to correct him right now, but maybe in 2 weeks.
Because right, like the spoiler aspect with this story is interesting because clearly, as this episode shows, it's meant to be a little bit of a reveal, and yet like promotional material for the book or casual conversation about like the spinoff often references who Egg really is.
But we kept it a secret here on A Cast of Kings, baby.
I tried to keep it as low key as possible.
Yeah. All right. Shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
All right. So in this episode, Season 1, Episode 3 of Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the Squire begins at the dawning of a new day for the tourney at Ashford Meadow. Egg wakes up with the birds chirping and decides to do a bit of training with their horse. And I have to say, wonderful sequence. The actor who plays Egg handling this horse with much more grace and courage than I would, even though I'm going to say 4 times as heavy and large as Egg. 4 of Egg could fit in my body probably, but he is just, it's like a complete natural to this. And I would be terrified in this situation, But I love this training sequence. It's really beautiful, well done. You really buy that he's connecting with his horse. And of course, there is a gratuitous horse pooping scene. So what more could you ask for? Any thoughts on this opening scene?
Yeah, it felt like a callback to like Dunk. If that opening pilot scene of Dunk going from being like, I'm going to go to this tournament, to him like shitting behind a tree was meant to be a little bit emblematic of like, he's a bit nervous. He doesn't quite have like the stones for this yet. The horse taking its time to poop right when Egg is trying to be like, okay, let's show him what we do, I felt like was a great like kind of mirroring of like, look, this just happens in nature. Sometimes we just got to take a moment, do the necessary, and then get on with our training, or then get on with the mission. I also loved this. There was like a very beautifully shot scene of Egg walking Thunder through the forest, like presumably to get to this field where he can do training more. And it reminded me, it reminded me so much of this like really quick shot that happens in the first Lord of the Rings movie, Fellowship of the Ring, directed by Peter Jackson, of Gandalf and Samwise and Frodo setting off with their pony, Bill. And it's like, it's one of those moments where, you know, I don't know if the sun was truly rising in that way or if they staged all of the lighting to look like that. Either way, it was a beautiful piece of like little cinematic movie magic.
I agree.
And I also, yes, I loved the way that we saw Egg interacting with Thunder in the same way. It's really starting to feel to me by this episode that every scene that comes before this, or you know, that every scene is very intentionally placed in a way that tease up something that's coming in the future. So when I saw this scene playing out with Egg, which isn't really in the books, it's not like we have like some extended moment of seeing Egg trying to get himself ready to truly be a squire for Dunk. So the choice in showing the way that his character interacts with Thunder, the way that he speaks to him, the specific word, like the way that he's telling him, like, my father said you should never talk to a horse and they're dumb and they only understand the crop, meaning like whipping, basically. And him saying like, I don't think that's true and I'm going to, you know, treat you nicely. It even reminded me just of the scene in last episode where, or was it the first episode? The scene where the Targaryens arrive and someone goes to try to help with their horse and gets kicked in the face, right? And then Dunk is the one who goes and kind of calms down the horse. And I feel like they are very deliberately showing us how it's meaningful which characters, mostly men, are able to have like a gentleness and a communication with their horses versus the people who either are like out of their depths around horses or who are cruel towards their animals. And of course, later in this episode, I also think that this scene is setting us up to feel more deeply how horrible it is that Arian intentionally mangled a horse the way that he did in the joust later. My stepmom actually works with people who have horses, if that makes sense. She's almost like a horse whisperer, but for people, of like teaching people who might be intimidated around horses or just bought a horse and want to learn how to ride it or whatever. She teaches them how to almost like interpret horse body language and like the right ways to work with them and like bond with them effectively to then get them to do what you need to do. And in this scene, I think that we see right away Thunder responding to Egg and his enthusiasm, and they kind of both, you know, put their money where their mouth is in terms of trying to do this thing. Also, it's just kind of crazy to me. I'm watching this week to week.
You have not watched ahead.
I have not watched ahead. And I think it's again, in terms of like some of the stuff that happens in earlier episodes being so intentional. You know, we remarked upon that scene when Egg and Dunk were first watching the jousting unfold, and that flash of Egg seeming to get almost like nervous or like distressed when he was watching the squires in all of the chaos of the horses turning around and lifting the lances. And then this scene, I think, specifically capitalizes on that. We're like, oh, right. He literally was thinking to himself, like, we gotta figure out how to do this, Thunder, because like me and you have the odds against us kind of vibe. It just really, a really delightful way to open the entire episode.
Agreed. There's this confrontation that Egg has with a Sir Robin Riesling who walks up to him. He's like a knight, and he's afraid that Egg has stolen the horse, but then Egg is able to prove that he hasn't stolen the horse kind of by kind of subduing the horse, as it were. But I'm curious, what is the deal with this character, Kim Renfro? He's apparently the maddest knight in the Seven Kingdoms, and he says a line that I was very curious about. He says, "We are a vessel for the warrior. When it is madness bid, it is madness delivered." End quote. Who is the warrior? What is the warrior? What is that talking about, Kim?
The warrior is it's basically like one of the faces of the god who is worshipped by the Faith of the Seven. So the Faith of the Seven is one of the older religions in Westeros. It predates the Targaryen arrival. And it was kind of it's part of the narrative that like Aegon and his successors adopted the Faith of the Seven as sort of like a symbolic way to try to unite the people under them. But largely it's the small folk who really worship the Faith of the Seven. And of the seven, the warrior is one of them. So
got it.
In a way, you can think of the warrior as like one of the seven gods, but really it's meant to be like a facet of one all-knowing god. And so the warrior is the god who gets invoked, obviously, by knights, by soldiers, anyone who's entering some sort of physical feat of strength or needs bravery. And so I think it's meant to come off in this scene as a little bit like a bit of like religious fanaticism from this particular knight, that like he's all in on being like, I represent the warrior. If madness is bid by the gods, I will deliver madness. Like, you know, so Robert Riesling is a knight who is referenced as partaking in this tournament. And I think that they just chose to have him be introduced in this little way with Egg. I think both because it sets up it's a bit of foreshadowing that Egg is a Targaryen. Because the madness thing, you know, like we've heard that phrase so many times throughout George R. R. Martin's stories of like, when a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin and like they're either mad or they're not. And so I think that having Sir Robin deliver that line and kind of come across Egg in this moment was like a little bit more world building for the joust and the tourney. I'm sure that we will see him again in coming episodes. And doing a little bit more of that groundwork laying for like, there's something going on with Egg here that like maybe we don't quite know the whole story yet. And by the end of the episode, we know the story.
We know some of it, at least.
Some of the story. I also I love Egg's response that like, oh, I've heard, like, because Egg has heard of him. Egg knows Sir Robin. Yeah. He says like, I know that you're the maddest knight.
And why would Egg know of him, right? Like,
right.
Egg is just some random kid, right? Why would Egg know of him unless, you know?
Yeah. Same thing. It was also, it like ties into like it being good foreshadowing in previous episodes when Egg was the one who knew that the Kingsguard was like the son of a very wealthy crabber. Like, oh, right. He owns, like, that was also a moment where like,
that's some real inside knowledge Egg is displaying there.
Right. And like Dunk kind of just doesn't, maybe I think some of the implication here, and Dunk has a bit of this internal monologue of like, oh, I'm stupid, I should have known better. But like Dunk is not picking up on the fact that Egg speaks like a highborn, knows a lot about the highborns, knows a lot about the rules of these things. Dunk is just kind of taking that on face value. But I think in retrospect, the watcher can see that there's something different about this kid.
When Egg returns to camp, Dunk tests out being a strict kind of mentor to his squire, but he quickly changes his tune, and instead they spend a fun morning together practicing sewing, making breakfast, getting to know each other better. He tries to kind of be a mean knight like Sir Arlen of Pennytree, but it doesn't take. He can't do it. He's too nice. And so they do a lot of crafts, and we see him cook an egg, like goose egg from the camp. And I have to say, food looks pretty good in the show. You know, it's like, oh wow, I don't want to live out under a tree like these guys, but I would eat that breakfast. You know, that looks pretty good.
Yeah,
So,
it was like a good like
yeah.
campfire cowboy breakfast again with like the whistling song over this. Like,
Yeah,
just gives
very
me
Western like coded
yeah,
theme here. Yeah,
very just like idyllic vibes. I again this detail of Dunk making conscious choices not to treat Egg the way that he was treated by Sir Arlen is a show invention that I very much love. I love that they're doing that with his character, that they're showing him kind of grappling with what it means to be the caretaker of another young orphan, and what kind of caretaker he wants to be. And I think it's mirrored in the way that Egg treats the horse. Like, if there's like a hierarchy of people who have power over each other and horses can be people. You know, we see Egg at the start of the episode make the choice to say, my dad says that this is how you should treat a horse or how you should train a horse, and I'm not gonna do that. I actually think that you're smart and you deserve autonomy. And then he gets back to camp and Dunk has the opportunity to be like, I'm gonna give you a clout on the ear, or you have to go work your little heart off until, you know, you're exhausted, and then I'll give you food. The conscious decision to kind of to choose connection and teaching with Egg over discipline, over physical punishment. I absolutely think that all of that holds a lot of meaning in what the story is trying to tell you about what it means to be a knight, what it means to be a man in this universe, and therefore, for the rest of us watching, what it means to be a parent. I can now speak from my parent heart when I'm reflecting on these shows. And like, one of the things that I've learned about little kids, and I apply this with my son, is first of all, this phrase that unwanted behaviors are unmet needs. Like, the idea that if a kid is doing something that you don't want them to do, it's not because they're just being a little jerk, it's because they need something, and maybe you just have to figure out how to get it to them. And then the second part of that is this phrase, connect then correct. And the idea that, like, if a kid does something that you don't want them to do in the moment, it can actually be more beneficial in the long run to like take a moment to just like get on their level, connect with them, and then talk about what it is that they did wrong, or talk about like what they should do differently in the future. And I feel like I watched Dunk choose to do that, of being like, oh, I could chastise you for just taking my horse away, for making him, you know, all dirty and messed up, for being, you know, a squire who doesn't know how to sew. Like, come on, what's wrong with you? But instead he takes the moment to be like, no, let me actually just connect with you and do this with you and teach you. And you like immediately see the bond that creates between them.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful choice.
Agreed. Some positive masculinity on display here in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Surely the story is only going to get happier from here, I think is what I would predict.
Yep. Just smooth sailing in Westeros. Nothing wrong happens.
Nothing
for
could
a
ever
generation.
go wrong. That's right. Yeah. That's right. All right, moving on. Oh, I do want to shout out that that Dunk is like, hey, I'm ready to go to the joust today, but Egg needs to tell him that only knights of higher birth or prestige can actually challenge someone on the first day. He has to wait till the next day. So he, you know, just FYI about how the tournament works. But later, Dunk meets with Plumber, the master of games, and they have a private conversation because the House of Ashford has spent a lot of money on these games, and they need to make some of it back. So Plumber offers Dunk the winning role in a staged matchup. Apparently, Lord Ashford and others have an ongoing betting system, and they want to make a lot of money real fast. Their plan is to have Dunk, the unlikely victor, challenge Sir Andrew Ashford, one of the Lord's sons, who is also in on the scheme. All Dunk has to do is appear to choose Sir Andrew of his own accord, and then the joust will be intentionally thrown by Sir Andrew. Dunk seems offended by the dishonor in the plan. Plumber says he has until the next day to make up his mind and warns him to mind his pride. Now, I do think it's somewhat amusing and ironic that this episode of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is happening while we in America are dealing with a crisis of confidence in sports that is being undermined by sports betting. Like there have been articles written about this, how people are doubting the authenticity of sports results because betting has taken over sports ever since the Supreme Court decision legalized sports betting. Now you can do it from your phone. And a lot of athletes, right, whenever a game happens, they get lots of death threats of like, why did you not make that point? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? I didn't hit my 3-way parlay. Like all these things happening that are undermining the integrity of the games. And pretty much any kind of game, basketball, baseball, like whatever, football. And so it's sad to me that was not confined to the real world. That's also leaked over into the Westeros world, where like it's getting to the point where you can't even tell if you're betting against a person in a joust that they might go down of their own accord.
Can't trust anything.
Yeah. Kim, any thoughts on the also I kind of thought that Dunk reacted appropriately, which is, hey, you want me to do something very dishonorable, and I think they assume that he doesn't really have much honor because he doesn't have much of anything. But maybe honor is the one thing he does have. Kim,
you're not wrong. I also really liked the way that Dunk responded. I won't go like too deep into this again for the sake of like potentially preserving future things, but the only thing that I will say is that this conversation and this little subplot also doesn't happen in this novella story. But it feels like they are pulling a subplot from one of the future novellas and kind of threading it in here.
Interesting.
I think just to add to the tension and the challenges that Dunk's honor is facing at this very moment.
Make it more believable that he survives the first round. Perhaps we'll see.
And maybe that, right? Because that was the other thing I was going to say. I think Dunk. I mean, I don't know. I think that Dunk is also reacting the way that he's reacting because they're asking him to do this on his first challenge.
Right.
Like he's been doing all of this mental buildup. He's been puking all day at the thought of like going in and really like standing on his own 2 feet or, sitting on his own 4 horses' legs, and showing the world what he's capable of. And like, of course he's thinking that he's going to take pride in that and in the result. And so the idea that his first win would be a completely hollow kind of like corrupt victory, of course that rankles him. And I love Dunk for that. I would be sad if Dunk had been like, oh, sick, man. Yeah. Give me that horse and arms. Like I'm in.
Yeah, I agree. Not an opportunist. Dunk isn't. So
no.
Yeah. All right. What else happens next? Hornsblair announcing Aerion Targaryen has come to challenge one of the 5 current champions of the tourney. He picks Sir Humphrey Harding, the man currently favored to win, and deliberately kills his horse in the second round of jousting. Pretty brutal sequence. Not great to see a horse killed and then the guy's leg all crushed and messed up like that. Well filmed, effectively conveyed the horror of this sequence. Can you say anything about what it means to kill a person's horse in this context, Kim? Or like, I assume it's very dishonorable and
yes,
not cool, but yeah.
No, not cool. Not cool. It's very uncool of you, Arian. Yeah, it's a bit, it's both, it's meant to be a deliberate showing of dishonor of a knight or a participant in this tourney who lacks chivalry, who lacks any sort of proper gamesmanship. This type of thing does seem to just happen though in George R. R. Martin's universe of tourneys. Like, if folks remember back in the first season of Game of Thrones, and this happened in the book too, Sir Loras Tyrell plays a bit of a trick on his opponent in the match by riding a mare who's in heat, who will like set off the other horses and effectively like give him the advantage, and it succeeds. And that in that scene, gosh, of course now I'm forgetting his name, the other massive broody man, big evil, who's the big evil Kingsguard guy? Gregor
Clegane?
Yes. Is my brain healing that I'm forgetting things? Or is it a sign of something else? Gregor Clegane. Yes, you will remember that he loses that match because of this trick that Loris plays, and then out of like in a rage, he kills his own horse.
That's right.
There was like that
right.
really gnarly scene.
He
so
decapitates it, right?
Yeah. So this is meant to evoke that same type of vibe of like something has gone wrong here. And it's because there was trickery afoot. So it happens, but it's not meant to happen. If that makes sense. Like it is in universe seen as like a bad thing. I think Arian was a little more slick about it, maybe, hence like Egg being the one who like really picked up on the intentionality behind it, but also I
thought it was Dunk that kind of that called it before it was happening, if I recall correctly.
Well, yes, but to me, when Dunk says that, I think that Dunk is innocent enough at this stage that he thinks it's like, oh no,
it's an accident. Like, he's accidentally putting his spear too low, right? Or his lance too low. Yeah.
Right. But Egg, who's watching, also I love the little detail. This is straight from the books. Egg in that matchup going, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him. And you kind of see Dunk like give him a look. In the book, Dunk is sort of like, who is he asking to kill who? Like, Dunk's not sure who he's yelling at. And of course, it's only by the end of the episode, I think it's very obvious that Egg had a moment of hoping that Sir Humphrey Harding would take care of his brother right then and there.
Absolutely.
But no.
So before things get out of control, Egg asks to leave and they go to a tavern. Lionel Baratheon is there drinking and singing a song about Alice, a woman with only 3 fingers on one hand who sexually serviced men. Dunk and Egg share a meta moment where they reflect on the meaning of storytelling, honor, and the legacy of a name. I thought this was a wonderful sequence. Then talking about this woman who sticks her whole arm bone into guys' asses, I guess, or whatever body part,
whatever floats their boat.
And it's like very funny because they're talking about this very ribald, inappropriate song, but like connecting it to what service and loyalty really mean. So classic George R.R. Martin stuff here. Really
Interestingly, this was not from the book.
What?
Right? This is a really great show invented scene.
Wonderful.
I loved it. Again, with like the original song, this sort of solemn teaching moment that happens between, again, like a role reversal where Egg is the one in this situation being a little bit more wise. Her name is Hope, sir. Belongs to all who invoke it. I was like, why am I? Yeah, like the ability for them to make me feel a genuine amount of like hope and like, yeah, that is the point of all of this, isn't it? About that song. It's pretty great.
It's really great writing, yeah. So a fortune teller stops Dunk and Egg and tells the tall knight he'll be richer than a Lannister one day while giving Egg an ominous prophecy. I think she says something along the lines of you'll be king one day and people will rejoice when you die, something along those lines.
Burn in a fire.
Yeah, you'll die in a fire. So, and of course Egg is really upset by this, which is appropriate.
Why would she say that?
Kim, why don't we save this conversation for the end? I think
sure.
I want to discuss the implications of this, and then I have like some potential book spoilers we can say for the end for this.
Yeah.
But let's react to this at the end. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Stick a pin in it.
Raymond Fossway spots Dunk and offers him homemade cider. Egg takes a chance to go watch the puppet show and get Dunk's shield. But everything comes to a head when Arion arrives at the puppet show just in time to see Tanzil pretending to slay a dragon. Tension builds as the episode cuts back to Dunk and Raymond still gossiping about the Targaryens. So I guess the idea is that it is inappropriate to show a dragon being slayed, that dragon being a symbol of the Targaryen line, and therefore Arion takes it very poorly. Meanwhile, go ahead, Tim.
I was just gonna say, yes, exactly, but it's not like, oh, everyone in Westeros knows you should never put on a puppet show about dragons being killed. I think this is meant to be an example of Aerion taking particular pride and rancor over the symbolism of a dragon, and being unnecessarily cruel and reactive about it. It's not like, I don't think that the setup was meant to be like, oh, Tansel's like, really trying to stick it to the Targs.
Right. She's just trying to vie for historical accuracy in her recreations. So,
and yes, the scene the play that she's doing, which is the same one that they showed this one in the first episode too. So it's a repeat.
It's a rerun.
It's a repeat. It's a rerun, and it's cute because in the books, Egg knows, like, oh, they're gonna do the dragon one again tonight. It's like, it's like if there's a.
And what is the play for those who are?
Yes, thank you. I was gonna say it's a legend from the Age of Heroes. I believe they're trying to do about a knight named Serwyn, Serwyn of the Mirror Shield, I believe they call him, because in the legend, the way that he's able to slay the dragon is by tricking the dragon with like his shield is buffed so perfectly that it reflects the dragon's face and confuses the dragon into thinking that he's fighting a dragon, which gives the man enough time to sneak around and stab him in the eye or the neck or a vulnerable position. And so again, it's like, this is a legend long, like ages ago within this universe. Tansel just had the wrong Targ in the audience for this one. So.
I love that at the same time, Raymond is telling Dunk about his feelings, by the way, kind of dangerously, I would say.
Yeah.
Sharing his true thoughts on the Targaryens, because I think Dunk still has that reverence for the Targaryens, and Raymond does not have that reverence because obviously the Targaryens have brought great misery and suffering onto the people, often without honor. And Raymond explains that really effectively. He also explains his take on Maker's 4 sons. The oldest is Daeron, a sot he's described as, with the vain and cruel Aerion being the second born. That's the character with the short blonde hair who killed the horse and who harasses Tansel in this episode. The third son isn't named, but Raymond says he's going to be sent to the Citadel to become a maester. I don't even think it's a spoiler to reveal that character. Who is that character, Kim?
It's Maester Aemon.
Yes, Maester Aemon from Game of Thrones.
Yes, the future. You see him as a very, very old man at the wall who kind of like advises Jon Snow and mentors Samwell Tarly into becoming a maester as well. So that is the brother, one of the older brothers, one of Egg's older brothers, is Maester Aemon.
Yeah,
in Game of Thrones, and that's why he's like 100 years old in Game of Thrones.
Right, and also probably older than that. And then also you may recall, spoilers for Game of Thrones, but Maester Aemon dies during the events of Game of Thrones and says words about his siblings when he dies, some of whom are referenced, some of whom aren't referenced, by the way, in his dying words. And so, anyway, I think it's fun to connect that to kind of what's going on here.
Yeah, so. It's an oft quoted line from George R. R. Martin's books of Maester Aemon on his deathbed saying, "Egg, I dreamed I was old."
Egg, I dreamed I was old. Heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking of like, right, he's having a moment where he's almost thinking that he's talking to his little brother and he's a boy again. Beautiful line, and like that is a very George R. R. Martin-ism to take a little line like that and then zoom in and expand it out into this story that we're seeing here of Dunk and Egg, so that we learn more about who exactly it was that Maester Aemon was remembering.
Yeah, and I think Aerion not mentioned in his monologue.
I don't think so. Which right?
Wonder why?
Big old dick.
Anyway, Raymond is conveniently interrupted by Egg before he can tell Dunk the youngest brother's name. At Egg's urging, Dunk runs to stop Aerion from hurting Tansel. He gets a few hits in on Aerion before guards come in and subdue him and set him up to get curb stomped.
Also not in the book. He says he threatens to take his teeth out.
Right, because he's knocked a few of Arian's teeth out, so he's like, I'm going to start by taking all of yours.
Yeah.
By the way, a great sequence because you really get a sense of how Dunk can move. Like, this guy is huge. He can it's like 3v1, but if it was 2v1, like maybe Dunk could even have gotten the upper hand in that one, right? So,
yeah. Before it's like it happens so fast before he's even in the tent, he shoves one guard to the ground, which I clocked because that's part of how the sequence unfolds in the books. But watching it happen on screen was so satisfying. And I again love the way that they've set this up in the show, because this is the first moment we see Dunk doing anything physical that might be considered knightly or fighting or showing his training. And the fact that we get it in this moment when he's deciding to defend the innocent is amazing. Because yes, he's a hunk of a man in more than one way.
Egg rushes in with a crowd of men in his back and orders the guards to release Dunk. His true identity as Aegon Targaryen is revealed as Arianne asks what happened to his hair, and the young boy says he cut it off so he wouldn't look like his brothers. So, big twist. Egg is actually Aegon Targaryen, one of Maker's 4 children, correct? One of the 2 children who have gone missing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're like me, you're mildly surprised at this. I wasn't like completely shocked, but I'm like somewhat shocked because, there have been many ways that the show has kind of tried to head fake you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's one of them. At the very first episode, Dunk and Egg meet for the first time, and Egg is playing with Dunk's armor. And Dunk asks Egg, hey, are you an orphan? And I just assumed Egg was, because he thought the innkeeper woman was his mom. And then he's like, no, my mom's dead. And he's like, oh, so you're an orphan. And then I thought Egg said, yes, I am. But he didn't. Here's what actually happened.
You an orphan, boy?
Are you?
I was.
Dunk asks, are you an orphan, boy? And he says, are you? Doesn't answer the question. Doesn't answer the question. And then, of course, there is earlier on this episode, I think Egg is talking about his pubic hair, if I'm not mistaken, right, Kim?
Yeah.
He says, like, is it weird that I have black pubic hair growing? And Dunk says, it's weird that you're telling me about it. But it's like, would he really have black pubic hair, or was he lying about that,
Because he's a Targaryen?
Right, because he's Targaryen. Because they all have like this golden hair coming out of them. So
I don't know if your hair is always exactly the same shade on every part of your body.
Well, I hate that the show is making me ask those questions.
Fair enough.
Anyway, so
he got
the
Baelor's.
show has definitely
That's part
tried
of
to
Baelor's genes,
The show has tried to head fake you into thinking that Egg is just this random orphan boy. Of course, he is of enormous importance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Kim, are there any non-spoilery things we can talk about before we get to some spoilery things about Egg potentially? But any non-spoiler things, like how do you think this reveal was handled in the show?
Oh, I was obsessed with it. Again, I think just within this episode, they laid a lot of neat little foreshadowing work.
Mm-hmm.
The music again did a lot to like build up to sort of like the dread and shock of this moment. I love the choice that the sort of like camera work that like zooms out on Egg to show like the force that he's been able to bring with him. And then like the musical, it's timed with the music where like we go from like one person's reaction to the other, and we see like
right.
We see
it
the
revealed, yeah.
We see how the people in the room are responding to this reveal, and I think that does a really good job of mimicking how you might feel at home. And just I think Peter Claffey, who plays Dunk, really nailed like this like expression on Dunk's face in the final moment of like, wow, my butt just got saved a little bit, and also like I've been betrayed by this boy I thought was like about to be my future, Squire for life. Even like all the conversation early, like the conversations between them earlier are so fun to rewatch, or for me to just watch the first time, like knowing the truth
right
between them, how like, Egg is laying out how he might get a patch of land someday and like a place of his own. And it's like, as a prince, he probably is most likely going to be given some sort of home to rule over, and lands and a wife. Him saying like, I could get used to a place like this, and Dunk being like, you are in a place like this, like, well, but, Dunk doesn't realize that Egg isn't used to truly living among the small folk in this way. That it's a choice that Egg has been making. Again, to your point of like the way that he asked Dunk to bring him to the tournament with him. Egg clearly wasn't interested in sticking with Darren, who, as we saw, was like wasted and didn't seem very useful in that first in the pilot scene when we see him in the inn. And even down to, this is in the books a little bit too, which I loved that they included this staging detail.
That's Darren. That's the other of Makor's kids. Yeah, okay.
I think we can. I think it's fair.
Yeah, okay.
To say
I don't think
now.
It's a huge spoiler, but yes, I did not make that connection. But yeah, so that's the other Targaryen is the one that's in the inn with Duncan,
because they were traveling together.
Yeah.
So Darren and Egg were meant to be on their way to the tournament, and that's why they were at the same inn that Dunk stopped at. Again, it's on the way to Ashford Meadow, but Darren was just drunk. He's the one who like brandished a knife at Egg and said something weird about a dream. Again, in retrospect, it's like, oh right, the Targaryen have this like, they have this dreamer legacy within their family.
Good thing too, that's never led to any misunderstandings.
No.
Certainly not ones that animate an entire other show. But go ahead.
The other quick bit of like little foreshadowing I was going to mention is when Raymond Fossaway sees Dunk and Egg and goes like, oh, I saw you with this boy, it's a Squire. If you rewatch that moment, Egg is like kind of like turning away. He's not really making direct eye contact with him, and it's because Raymond would recognize him. And we see by the end of the episode, like Egg runs into the tent, gets Dunk to leave. We don't actually see what Egg and Raymond, we don't see any sort of like conversation between them or anything. The next thing that we see though is Egg coming with Raymond like ready to fight. And so presumably as soon as Egg made that interruption and sent Dunk off to save Tanzil, Raymond probably had a bit of like a revelation off screen of being like, oh, hello, Prince. Like, it's you. What do you need? Oh, you need my sword? Great, let's go. And then like, the Stefan Fossaway is even there in the background too when Egg comes back. It's like they got the cousins and they went. So again, a fun bit of staging that like, Egg was trying to avoid being seen too clearly by any of the noblemen who might have been able to recognize him.
I think the only thing, so that's all great. Those are all nice clues. I think the only thing that's like potentially questionable is Egg showing up at these tournaments.
I know.
He's on Dunk's shoulders. Like he's visible to a lot of people.
He's very visible.
Is it no one of importance would be like, hey, isn't that Maker's son? But whatever, we can forgive that.
I suppose the head shaving is where we're supposed to give a little bit of, that's meant to be some of his disguise.
It's like his version of the Clark Kent glasses. Like,
exactly.
It's like, oh, now you don't recognize me a little bit, right?
Yeah, and he has his hood up a lot when they're walking around, but all of those scenes of him being like very obviously the only child in the in the audience.
Right, he's not like even though he's small, he's not inconspicuous. So.
No.
I will say that I did have a fun moment watching this episode where when Dunk lays hands on Arian, that's like really upsetting because like, oh my, you are so screwed, because I'm guessing it's like hitting a made man in the mob, or it's like you're not supposed to lay hands on a Targaryen.
No.
You're not supposed to lay hands on someone of royalty. That's probably like an instant death sentence. And so I'm like in my mind, it all happened so fast. I'm like, how is he going to get out of this one? Because like, if he punches Arian, like there's no way he's going to get out of this alive or even intact. And then the one thing that could save him is if, hey, the person that told him to do it was Arian's brother and also a Targaryen, And so that was a nice like, oh, that's, he really got himself in trouble, but the one thing that saved him that could have saved him is the thing that saved him. And that was a fun moment. So
yeah. And I think it's also a great moment of, again, it I think helps show the sort of like reciprocal or like mutual teaching relationship going on between Dunk and Egg, of like, if you rewatch these episodes again, knowing who Egg is, you see him really paying attention to Dunk whenever Dunk is telling him about how he's going to take care of people, or how he wants to do the right thing, or how he believes, like, you know, how he believes noblemen should behave. And it's almost like watching Egg find a good guy in Westeros. It's almost like Egg has been like searching for a knight who will do the right thing, who will live in his vows. And I think Egg sees the clear wrongdoing going on. And I don't know, in my mind, I'm like, it almost feels like Egg might be a little bit like relieved or like gratified that he now knows who to go to for help, and that help comes right away and does the right thing. And Egg kind of like facilitates all that, knowing that he can protect Dunk, knowing like, okay, Dunk's got our back in terms of like the underdogs of the world, and I'm gonna have his back. Like, I'm gonna, I'm gonna bring the full force of my allies, even though I'm just a little boy.
I mean, I have a lot of questions, right? That we don't need to talk about the answers right now necessarily, but it's like, is Egg still going to be able to beat Dunk's Squire? I bet Dunk is really happy he didn't beat Egg. That's nice. Also, by the way, in retrospect, I should have seen all the clues. Like, his name is Egg. Aegon Targaryen is the name of like 18 characters on the show. Probably should have put 2 and 2 together there. Anyway, we'll see. Like, I'm curious, like, how is the tournament going to unfold? Like, is that even going to be a thing? Also, I understand that they're in multiple novellas and they go off and have adventures. How does that going to work? Like, what are the plot mechanics of that? Because isn't Egg going to need to go back and be a Targaryen or whatever? Anyway, so many questions that probably the show will begin to answer in due time.
Yeah. But I can say a non-spoilery thing on that last bit, which is just to point out that Egg is the 4th son of the 4th son of the current king. If that makes sense. So yes, he's a prince. Yes, he holds a certain amount of power and influence over everyone who serves the royal family, but he's very far down
the line of succession.
Of succession in a way that like he doesn't have a lot of existing duties or expectation of him at the moment, which is why him and Darren were just kind of able to be off and wandering on their own. And of course, Maekar's worried about them, but it's not like, oh God, the heir is missing. It's just like, oh man, 2 of our random Targaryen boys are unaccounted for at the moment.
Yeah. All right. Before we move forward, well, actually, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do some feedback on last week's episode, and then we'll do like a couple of very minor book spoilery things for the very, very end.
Okay.
So let's do some feedback from last week's episode. We got some comments over at youtube.com/@decodingtv. Of course, you can always email us at decodingtv@gmail.com as well. Ming Lu writes into youtube.com/@decodingtv. I think Dave is confused, which is, by the way, something that happens a lot. Baelor tells Dunk that because he is not Sir Arlen's trueborn son, he can't inherit Arlen's arms, meaning coat of arms, not armor as Dave seemed to think. Which is why Baelor tells Dunk he would need a new sigil when seeing Sir Arlen's still on the shield on Dunk's back. Dunk does get new armor, but not because Baelor told him to, but because Sir Arlen's armor was too small for him. So Dunk still has Sir Arlen's sword, so if Baelor literally meant Dunk couldn't inherit arms as in weapons and equipment, you'd think that would be one of the first things Dunk would get rid of, end quote. So that makes sense. I think I understood that it was primarily the coat of arms and that he was still using his other stuff, maybe. But good clarification. He primarily meant coat of arms, not necessarily any physical pieces, right?
Yes, exactly. And it adds to the weight of Baelor truly recognizing and knowing Sir Arlen of Pennytree, that when Dunk turned around in the room in that moment and the shield was on Dunk's back for that whole conversation, right? So Baelor only brings that up when he realizes when Dunk turns to walk away and he realizes that Dunk still has Sir Arlen's coat of arms on his shield, which is like a winged chalice. So Baelor recognized that and went, well, hey, here, son, you can't use that exact sigil. Go make your own. And hence Tansel having the shield.
Thank you for that correction. Appreciate that. Stress-Free K writes into youtube.com/@decodingtv. Here's how we know Dunk is lying. And we're talking about Dunk being knighted. It's because we never get a flashback of him being knighted. Of all the flashbacks he'd reminisce on, he would surely think back on that monumental moment most vividly. Instead, we get hard salt beef. The episode's title drives that point home. Just like becoming king of the crabbers, sometimes you got to start at the bottom of the barrel and claw your way to the top, or be born into wealth. End quote. I think that's a great point, but it's not definitive, but I think it's a great point of like, we never see the flashback to the knighting, and surely we would see that because we get a flashback to a bunch of other things, seemingly insignificant things.
Yeah.
So, you can take that as your own evidence or not of whether or not he was actually knighted.
And they chose to have that flashback, which I know we talked through, like, of very, very young Dunk asking Sir Arlen, do you think I could be a knight? And then him just like spitting and not answering.
Not saying anything,
So choices were made, and we are supposed to be interpreting that information.
Yes. You should interpret it how you would like, and we will interpret it how we prefer. Okay. So I don't know if you saw this story from Esquire, but there's a headline here. So I should point out, by the way, from this point forward, you should assume there will be minor book spoilers. So if you're like really averse to like book spoilers or things of that nature, you should skip the rest of the episode. But we'd love to hear what you think about the podcast and about the show at acastofkings@gmail.com. Or on YouTube at youtube.com/decodingtv. Subscribe to A Cast of Kings wherever you get your podcast, and Decoding TV podcast, where we cover TV shows every week. In Esquire, the A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms showrunner fought dragons with comedy. That's the headline. It's the interview with the co-creator of Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Ira Parker. And they were talking about how long the show would last. And the question is asked, there are 3 novellas. Are you thinking 3 seasons? And here's what Ira Parker says. I hope George keeps writing these. The truth is, and I've pitched this to HBO with a couple of very polite eye rolls, I want to do 4 or 5 now with Egg as a kid. Then I want to come back in 10 years and do 4 or 5 more seasons with Egg the Prince. And with real Dexter Ansel and real Peter just the age that they are at that point. Then we'll come back 10 years after that and do Egg the adult. So it would be over the course of their lifetime, and mine too. End quote. So he wants to do 12 to 15 seasons of Dunk and Egg over the course of 15. Actually, I think it'd be closer to like 20, 25 years. Depending on how you measure it. Unlikely that will ever happen, but that is the ambition. Kim Renfro, did you have any thoughts when you heard that?
Yes, I have so many thoughts. This is an interesting, it's an interesting piece of the puzzle behind the scenes when it comes to how these adaptations are living, breathing works of writing that aren't complete. If that, I remember seeing people kind of joke about this when it was first announced that Dunk and Egg was going to be one of the spinoffs of like, oh, well, here we go with another book series that isn't technically finished by George. So like, what does that mean? I've also seen in a separate interview with Ira Parker, I should probably look up and find the exact source of this, but I believe he has said a few times that George has effectively given him like unpublished Dunk and Egg storylines, like plots. Like Ira Parker's a bit more clued in on the specifics of what happens in Dunk and Egg's lives past this published work. And George has been saying for years, like right along with every time that he kind of, maybe not every time, most of the time when he blogs about how he's still writing things, namely The Winds of Winter, which he says he still wants to finish. He's always said, oh, and I have more Dunk and Egg stories that I want to write. And it's just, it's very unclear to me how realistic it is that we readers will ever see like fully published works. And I think it might wind up being possible that George R. R. Martin just uses Ira Parker as like his vessel for the story, assuming that HBO, Warner, whatever powers that be that run our ecosystem in the future want to pay for it and produce it. I think given what I'm seeing of this season and how I'm seeing people react, it seems like the kind of show that people would love to exist for decades off and on. But I don't like, do we have many examples of a TV show doing that?
No, there've been a lot of shows that they come back 20 years later, and are rebooted.
Yeah.
But very few of the kind of ambition of what he's describing, right?
It's like the movie Boyhood, but
yes,
a TV show.
They actually bring up that comparison in the interview, I believe.
Oh, nice.
But go ahead.
I think that what's interesting about this tie-in to the fact that we get this prophecy in this episode, and from my perspective as a book reader, I'm like, what's the best way to put this? I saw someone else on Reddit make this comment, like, I've been assuming we're never going to see Dunk and Egg's, the end of their lives, in detailed form.
Right,
because that makes sense.
Because it is history by the time A Song of Ice and Fire rolls around, and it is past the time period of the Dunk and Egg novellas, right?
Yes. So, right, assume that, like, I mean, I probably could look up at their exact lifespan, but George R. R. Martin he's published so many things, and maybe this is a good time to remind everyone of like the breakdown. But Dunk and Egg are novellas, right? Like short stories. Yeah. There's 3 of them currently published. They cover 3 specific events in these guys' lives. And then there's The World of Ice and Fire, which was effectively like an encyclopedia. It's almost like an almanac that George made for his own universe. He co-wrote it with a couple other folks who were able to like really expand out the detail. And so in A World of Ice and Fire, George covered more of the history, but in very loose, like you get 1 sentence for someone's entire life, or like 1 sentence for exactly what happened to them. No detail, no first person point of view, story-esque. And so if one wants to, you can look up or read A World of Ice and Fire and find out pretty much what happened to most of the characters in either House of the Dragon, if you're watching that, or in this case, these characters in Dunk and Egg. But the circumstances around what happens in the future is currently meant to be a mystery to readers.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Really? So when the fortune teller says, like, you will become king, that's what he says to Dunk, right? Like, you know what that means, but you don't know the full particulars of that. Is that correct?
Yes, and the other things that she says.
you understand why those things are true, but you don't necessarily have the full picture as a book reader. Is that correct?
Yes. And it would be very interesting if in the future we see that, but as Ira Parker laid out, that feels like a future that is like a decade or 2 away from us.
Yeah, 2 decades.
At least.
2 decades. Yeah.
So, and this fortune teller scene is also not in the book. And so this is another moment.
What do you make of it? Like, why do you think they did it this way? Why do you think they did the fortune teller?
I don't, like, honestly, I really enjoyed and had like little to no question about anything in the episode except this, because I'm kind of like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, especially in terms of like, we've talked about this before, like with analysis and stuff. It's funny when the shows put you in the position of being like, I'm not supposed to tell you what that means, but like they added in this really like,
right, like why
why add in something so direct?
Why would they do it? It takes away a little bit of the surprise from the end of the episode, right? If you don't know what's going on, and so it's like, what is the function of adding it? I will tell you, as a show watcher, the thing it does is, I guess, it casts a pall over everything. And like,
Right.
It makes it very dark. It makes Egg's future, like Eggs has been this kind of happy-go-lucky, innocent child, but it makes it like, hey, actually, there's incredibly dark things in your future.
Yeah.
And now we believe that will happen, and therefore, like, the audience expectation has been set accordingly, so that we don't think this is just going to be like happy-go-lucky adventures all the time. It's like horrifying things are afoot at some point.
Right.
So maybe it like helps set the stage for that tonally,
helps set the stage for that, which I think it does. To me, I'm kind of like, I wish we didn't have more horrors in the background.
Sure, but
of things.
And but that's gonna happen. So then it's only a question of whether it's only a question of whether we foreshadow it or not.
Right. And it also seems to serve as, they did this with House of the Dragon also, where they brought in this prophecy talk.
Oh, right. Yeah.
With Rhaenyra being like the inheritor of the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy. And so it seems to be another example of like, is magic, is sorcery, are these things like real functional powers in the world of Westeros? For the most part, I think we can say yes in terms of magic, given what we, the audience, know about everything that goes on both in the past and the future. But honestly, I didn't love that aspect of House of the Dragon, of them inserting that in House of the Dragon. And sitting here too, I'm like, unless they're gonna thread, maybe that woman reappears somehow. I got a weird feeling about that. Like the character, I don't know. It felt deliberate in a way that doesn't make total sense to me right now. And I'm hoping will in the future, if that makes sense. Like maybe this is a thread they're going to pull at in future episodes that again will be a bit of a surprise to book readers of like, what exactly are they doing here? What is either George or Ira Parker trying to tell us about magic, about Aegon's fate, about destiny versus, being a master of your own life.
Yeah.
But it's a noteworthy moment in the episode because I think both book readers and show watchers perked up and maybe got a little confused.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's put a pin in it and then come back later if it pays off in any way. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.